Hey there, and welcome back to the B2B Marketing Asia podcast. I'm your host, Joe Escobedo, and very excited. Today, we talk about how to successfully promote and run events in APAC. And I have a wonderful team who's going to be joining me here today. I'd love to hear from you guys. Maybe you can share a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll dive into today's conversation. Maybe we'll start with Winnie.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am a field marketing manager for Asia at Sitecore, in charge of demand generation activities for the region. And I've been running events for about 10 years now.
Wow.
Over
Okay.
to you, Lynn.
Nice, Lynn.
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Lynn. I'm heading up the events business at Beats. As a company, we manage a few established event series such as the MarTech Summit, Chief Transformation Officer Summit, Chief Customer Experience Officer Summit. So yes, I've been in the event business for, over 10 years.
Goodness. Wow. Great. Last but not least, Neil.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Neil Halliday. I'm the sales director for Miro Customer Data Platform based here in Singapore. Previously used to work on the event side for Closer Still Media, which I set up their Big Data World event here after the successful launch in London. So I kind of bridge the old technology side with the event side as well. So hopefully we can give some good perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Welcome. Looks like we already have some people excited. They say, hello, y'all. All right. Love the enthusiasm starting off. Thank you guys so much for joining. If you guys have any questions, do let us know. Otherwise, I have a question for everyone because I think a lot of brands really struggle. They're putting on a lot of events, virtual events now, but they really struggle in promoting those events. So I'd love to hear from your guys' point of view and your experience. What has been some of the most effective ways you found to promote your events? We'll go with Lynn first.
Me. Okay. Well, that's a very big question, I'd say. We obviously for different type of event, it works very differently. But I think the first thing I would mention is probably content is king or queen. It's content come in obviously a lot of things. So we talk a lot in our MarTech Summit about content. So that's more sometimes about your messaging, how do you deliver the message to your audience and things like that. But from the event organizer point of view, when we say content, it is more about producing the most cutting edge agenda to make sure that you update agenda with the most elite speakers, with the most cutting edge topics, what's trendy at the moment, especially in a virtual scenario. We've been doing, like usually you do one event in Singapore in a year. And now because it's virtual, you actually can do once a month. So how do you keep that content up to date? I think to make sure that you deliver the right content to the audience is kind of my first thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to ask a follow-up question in terms of how do you identify what's trending, but we'll hear from the other folks as well too. Winnie, what are your thoughts on this?
Good point on the content part, and of course finding the right speakers to deliver that, and of course using the network of those speakers to kind of get that pull factor to come and join in the event. So usually what we try to do is to get the speakers to do a lot of social promotion to kind of target their group of audience or network. The other few common ones would be your email blast. And one thing I actually recently we tried out at Sitecore quite a fair bit is actually the LinkedIn event page. I think, Joe, I briefly talked to you about it last week. So this is something that we see do help out quite a fair bit, especially with the lead generation option that you can get the contact details of those folks that have joined in. So that's kind of starting to pick up, and we do see a higher conversion rate for that as well versus other ones that we've been using. Yep.
Very interesting. Cassie, thank you so much for joining us. Neil, my friend, what are some of the ways in which you found to best promote your previous events or current ones?
I mean, I guess on the previous side, I definitely agree with the speakers side, because like obviously when you acquire excellent sort of end user speakers, and thought leaders, and all that stuff, you can get them to present like actual case studies and stuff, projects they've worked on or things that have gone right. But quite often, if you can get them to speak about things that have gone wrong as well, super good, because it's very compelling for an audience. But for me, I always found engaging communities and stuff. I mean, I'm a sales guy, but obviously we did a lot of the marketing and stuff as well. Like the events go, everybody kind of all hands on deck. But when you engage the communities, kind of by giving them a platform for them to engage, but then build a solid network kind of around the event itself, and you do like co-promotion, sort of value add to the communities themselves, and then pays dividends when your event time comes around, because you're already in the conversation with the people for both your attendees and your prospects. It's kind of like keep that mix going, keep them engaged, and it works out in the long run.
Awesome. So I've heard speakers, I've heard content, and I've heard communities. So I just have some follow-up questions so we can dive a bit deeper into some of these topics. Lynn, you mentioned content is king or queen, coming up with cutting-edge content and topics. How do you keep up to date with what's going on, particularly in MarTech when it's changing so quickly?
Yeah, definitely. Keep close communication with speakers is key. Obviously, they know, as Neil mentioned, they have the real war stories. They have the case studies. They have, their successful cases and failures as well. Obviously, we keep close contact with attendees and the MarTech community as well, the community members. And a lot of reading. So our content team is through reading, the top kind of trendy reports, but also we work with our sponsors or partners very closely as well, because they constantly produce a lot of cutting edge content or reports and white papers. So those are the areas that I think quite crucial to cover.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you're crowdsourcing a lot of different ideas from different folks, from different sources to bring it all together.
Yeah.
Awesome. Winnie, you talked about having the right speakers. How do you identify speakers? How do you get them to promote on your behalf? I guess those are two questions, but I'd love to get your thoughts on both of those.
Yeah, so finding the right speaker is an interesting one. For us as a tech platform, we kind of have our internal kind of resource. Those people are most up to trend because they speak to the customers the most. So we try to get their feedback on, them speaking as well as who they propose. And that could be from our customer speakers as well. Because what audience want to hear is, like you guys say, true war stories, case studies. So we try to find customer speakers as much as we can. And finally would be people with industry insights. So thought leaders, we try to work with a lot of them from IDC, Gartner, just to get them to give that thought leadership introduction, the landscape of how the market is before we go into, kind of customer speakers and what Sitecore can provide. So that's how we kind of try to line up our agenda most of the time as well.
Got it. So once again, it sounds like a mixture, once again, of your internal team, your customers, and also thought leaders. You talked about industry analysts and things like that.
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. Neil, my friend, you talked about communities. What do we mean by communities? How do we get communities engaged?
Well, I mean, when I look at coming from the event side more than the kind of the software vendor side, like when I set the sort of event up for the big data side, it was a very sort of powerful way for me to get into a community that I didn't know with, by working with like all these different people that would be a sort of diversity, inclusion, or stuff that was kind of important for the companies and the kind of the wider community as a whole. But I guess like tying that in with some of the points the guys were saying previously about getting the speakers involved, I basically built a platform for them to come to the event, be able to speak, and then tie in the sort of end user companies, like the banks or insurance or whoever were interested in the sort of topics, and then you give them a platform to mix and interact, do panel sessions and all that stuff. And also, like, I think on the speaker side, having like the advisory boards that you kind of build over time, where you have people kind of that have a bit of skin in the game in the events themselves, where they kind of help to dictate the content a little bit, and they can sort of get involved with the case studies. But then I would always get my prospects or clients, when they sort of sign on, to invite their customers to come and talk about use cases that they've done with the vendors themselves. And same way now on the other side, like we invite clients or prospective clients as well, to come and do like webinars and all that sort of stuff to really sort of build the narrative and not control, but like help to keep the conversation sort of going within your own sphere of influence kind of thing. But also giving back and working together and just building around the event itself. You see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen some events companies incorporate what you're talking about of advisory boards. And I think it brings up a different mix of, like you said, the quality control, as well as hopefully they hope promote the event too. So it's ticking multiple boxes in there as well. Namita, thanks so much for chiming in. She said speaker communities, but content still remains king as we move to virtual events, finding new ways to engage with audience while with online voting and involving them to engage in the conversations. Communities will help drive engagement post-event as well as on an ongoing basis. Great discussion. Thank you so much, Namita. I really appreciate your feedback on that one. And that's another good point that I hadn't talked about previously, but how do you keep the conversation going? I think it's one of those things that, Lynn, you brought up. You used to have one event, each year. Now you have multiple events. How do you sustain that momentum when, the event's done, you pop champagne and everyone thinks it's over? How do you keep the conversation going, I guess?
Good question. With the whole virtual scenario, a lot of things work completely different. We do follow a very strict process with post-production, right? We want to make sure we wrap it up in an appropriate way. But things like on-demand content, for example, that's one, which is I wouldn't share any kind of my successful, thoughts just yet, because it's still kind of a very challenging area. I mean, we all know share on demand, push it, push the content. It's great content, but with all the live content coming through to our life at the moment, it's not just business, right? It's business calls as well. It's one-to-one calls with our colleagues. It's I don't know if you guys still do virtual quiz, but that's pretty last year. But different virtual events within the company. So on demand is something that yes, it's in the strategy, but how to implement it, it's tough. With keep the conversation going, I mean, again, we have the community to facilitate that, but again, how to get people's attention and really produce good content post event, it's a challenge. However, moving forward, because as I said, we now in a virtual scenario, we manage to do it that much more often. How do you continue that conversation that way? So how do you build your content based on the previous one? How do we evolve in a way that the next one is different, but we are evolving, kind of it is connected to the previous one as well? The story, kind of storytelling in a way, how do you connect the whole series one after another? If you manage to do it every month, we go every month live and we invite client speaker and user speakers, 20 of them every month. How do you connect that story? I think is really key. So even you can't push more with the on-demand, you can at least keep going to the next live story.
That makes perfect sense. You talked about on-demand content, and we have to, assume that not everyone will attend the event live. They may want to watch it when at their leisure. So on-demand content can be very impactful. You also talked about running series rather than one-offs. How do you connect the two and making sure that you're having a comprehensive story? So I think that makes perfect sense. Jeanette, thank you so much for joining. Great topic. Hello, Jeanette. Thank you so much for joining us. Always glad to see the folks joining us with such enthusiasm. Wonderful, guys. And Neil, I want to dive back to a point you were talking about earlier in terms of getting people to share their kind of, I don't want to say failures, but maybe things that didn't go right. How do you encourage people to open up and share things that, we talked about highlights and wins, but how do you talk about some of the obstacles or failures? How do you get them to open up?
I mean, I honestly, it depends, really. I mean, obviously, it depends on the speaker, because some people are super open to talk about stuff like that. Some people aren't. I guess it depends on how you're building the sort of content plan around, say, your theater or your online event or whatever. I mean, they have to be comfortable with it, but it's obviously the most important learning fact. I mean, I would wager most of the people who deliver a session at some point within that, they've derived the successes from a series of failures. And obviously that's very important for people listening to it, because that's how they got to that successful end result. So I honestly, I don't think there's an answer for it. I think it's with building up a sort of relationship with the speaker themselves. I think I always had quite a close relationship with some of my key speakers that would then, it's kind of grows and grows and grows into their network and stuff. So it's helping to control the narrative kind of the content itself at the event. But
that makes sense.
One easy answer for it, to be honest. It depends on the individual.
No, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And I think it drives back to a question I was going to ask Winnie too, in terms of getting people to promote it, because going back to Neil's point, it really depends on the speaker, I guess. Some are more active on social media. Those are not. Do you tend to pick people who are more active on social media because they're more inclined to share it? Or how do you get those who aren't really active, encourage them to promote the event on your behalf?
Yeah, so we definitely identify people that are more active. Those that are not so proactive, what we try to do is still produce all these social assets with their headshot in it, pass it to them, send them via LinkedIn just to try to get them to promote it because they still have a very good network. For people that are more proactive, we go the step further. We try to get them to do like 10 seconds to 30 seconds kind of video to promote it. And a lot of times they will do it. And of course, if you have a little bit more budget, kind of push that out on your digital ads to get people to sign up. So that's what we try to do with the different speakers. Yeah. And one other thing I would like to also add on, we also try to get our sales team, people that are closer to the customers, to get them to promote it via social as well as email. So that's the other step we can do. And they have the kind of relationship with them. So it'd be better than an email blast from marketing.
Awesome. Neil, I'm gonna bounce it off to you because I know you've kind of moved into the sales side. You came from the events, now you moved to kind of the business development sales side. Going back to Winnie's point, how would you encourage salespeople to share the event or promote it with maybe prospects or the right audiences?
That was like bread and butter back when we were kind of doing the events days. To me, it makes absolute sense. Like you're saying, the people that are having these conversations on a regular basis, they have the relationships. I mean, it's fundamental, I'd say, to the success of an event, having that. We did it a lot, especially in the event side. All the sales team were very active on LinkedIn. You have to cultivate the relationship. You have to, I don't know, I mean, it's just you have to be kind of in that public sphere promoting it. And like the salespeople, like you're saying, have got these, well, they should have these big networks of prospects and stuff. And, it's going to click in people's minds if there's a relevant topic or a relevant speaker that they want to come and hear from. And, it pays dividends in the end for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I guess it depends on the individual. Some are more active on others. How do you engage those folks who are already active and bring them on board? Makes perfect sense. Let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about one of your favorite events that you've attended, not your own events, and why. So I see Lynn lighting up first. I'm going to go with Lynn because I'm sure you've attended a ton of events. What's the one that stands out to you, and why was that the case?
I'm gonna kind of throw the ball back to Winnie, but
all right.
No. It's for me, DX Asia last year was awesome. Okay, that was Winnie's event, Cycor's event. So kind of give it a mention. It was exactly to the point what we just discussed. The past 15 minutes content. So it was a great lineup of speakers. It was a very thorough, thoughtful kind of agenda shaping. So in a virtual scenario, they went to different tracks as well, which was pretty brave back in the days. So not only they did kind of a marketing track, but also a technical track as well, where obviously you have challenges. How do you split people? How do you bring them back? How do you make sure, they keep engaged and they don't just, shut off their camera and do other things? And so yeah, that was a great one. That will be my first mention.
Oh, thank you.
So that means, Winnie, you have to say, hey, how great Neil's events were. That's how it works. We just kind of circle around each other.
I was actually going to say a physical event because I think as much as virtual is great, I think everyone missed a physical event. And one of my favorite physical events was actually in Sydney. It's the APAC Forum. It was really a very well produced event. And at the end, I think we talk about speakers, right? So one of their key highlight was to have Sophia, which is the social humanoid robot. And they got her on stage, and we see the interaction, even the questions asked from the audience, how the way she answered was really good, and that helps to bring up the experience. And I think it is always about who will be there to speak, and even this kind of a special feature, not necessarily 100% aligned with the event. It's always a very good addition.
Yeah. Sophia was making the tour there for a while. I think she was at a couple different events that I saw over a certain year period. So yeah, absolutely. All right, Neil, what's been your favorite?
you know, when I was just thinking about this event, I just thought back to just how many events that I'd actually attended over the past sort of 5-6 years. And I guess, I don't know, like Rise in Hong Kong was always quite good because it went beyond the event itself, and there was like loads of stuff going on around the city, great speakers and stuff like that as well. Like they actually had a really cool thing. I've lost all track of time now with COVID. It must have been 2019, maybe 2018. I can't remember, but Tony Fernandez from AirAsia came and spoke in this massive stage, and like everybody was watching. And then afterwards, he came and sat on there was like little sort of just crates in this tiny little semicircle, and just did this Q&A session with like all these people just sort of standing around. It was kind of a cool setup to be able to kind of interact with these like big name speakers kind of thing. And the FinTech Festival in Singapore as well, I always thought was quite good because they did a lot of different things. They did the lab tours, and again, a lot of the communities I worked with for the events were involved in it. So it was kind of like a nice segue into that side. But from the virtual side, like on the trade show aspect, I haven't really seen anyone nail a good virtual trade show. Like nobody's come up with a formula yet to actually deliver some. Like there's a lot of good virtual platforms, but for that big sprawling trade show aspect, it just maybe it does work, but nobody's kind of figured it out yet, I don't think, for the online scenario.
Yeah, it's a tough one. If anyone has cracked that, dive in. But I think, yeah, that is a challenging one because it's difficult to recreate that person to person. A lot of times you're at an event, you're kind of walking around, you may bump into someone, and then you start a conversation that way. So it may not be that you're going to a specific booth. It may just be walking around and you bump into someone. If you guys have, yeah. Lynn, have you?
Of course, I was on mute. No, it's interesting, you know, Winnie, you both mentioned about actually a physical event, because I realized when I heard the question, everything in my mind was just virtual because it's been so long. I actually don't remember clearly, you know, when was the very last physical event attended. I wanted to mention something a bit lame, but kind of a virtual teacher parents evening. It's in a virtual scenario. It's interesting because they actually gave me some inspirations there, because it's one-on-one. You only get 10 minutes. And I don't know if you're, I'm here based in the UK, so we've been like under a series of lockdowns and, you know, homeschooling for months and after months without any guidance. So for me, I was desperate to attend that very virtual meeting. I booked my calendar month in advance. I was, you know, taking notes, getting prepared, everything. But really, in the inspiration there, I think it's like virtual events still, I believe it can be successful, but you really need to find people's pain point. Like what, you know, like people need to want something in order to come to the event, stay focused and take notes and actually, you know, get some knowledge out of it. And the second, I would like to like kind of inspiration is the one-to-one time, right? So once you get the one-to-one or more like a focus group with a specific person or group of experts, you get inspired much more and you want to get involved, you want to engage. And that will solve all the issues that all the event organizers are facing in the virtual space, right? Please talk to you know, each other. But actually there is a specific scenario that people would love to talk. Like now, for example, it's such a great group and platform.
Absolutely. Well, Lynn, I'm going to echo that because I'm guilty of that as well, too, because my daughter's taking online classes now. And so I will sit in some of the online classes and take notes in terms of the technologies and stuff they're using. I'm like, I could apply that for my business. So I'm guilty of that as well. I definitely sit in and see what I could replicate for my business. So makes perfect sense. Cassie said, if someone did a conference in Roblox, I would be the first to sign up. Metaverse experiences are fantastic. Just haven't been adopted by B2B companies. I'm out of my field here, guys. I've seen
not in Roblox, but I've seen a couple of those like sprawling online worlds. There was a music festival or something they did not too long ago. I think I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't Roblox, but one of those like big online like environments, and they had like all these people come and sing and did the virtual thing. It was pretty good.
It's Tomorrowland.
Tomorrowland, was it?
Yeah, I think so. Because I was actually gonna say, if it's not related to B2B, I think Tomorrowland was great.
Pretty hard. I would say it would be pretty hard to sell B2B companies into like a platform like Roblox to come and shift software.
But no, that's an interesting point that I think Cassie and you guys bring up is, can we take inspiration from, you know, other virtual experiences, whether it be concerts or gaming or whatever it is, because I think that's where a lot of the innovation happens. Cassie says, yeah, Wave VR did the weekend concert. So yeah, we definitely get inspiration from outside our space. Apparently Burning Man did VR too. So these are ones where, once again, they're very, very household names in terms of events, conferences, festivals. It's interesting to see how they're replicating theirs. I don't know if Neil attended Burning Man.
Glastonbury, actually, just on a topical news update, did their VR thing, but it went a bit haywire, I think, just the other day. They were doing the free view. It was like the people couldn't get online. They couldn't get access. I had a big crash over the weekend.
Yikes. The joys of technology. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, guys. Well, I know a lot of us have leveraged events in different ways to drive the business, whether it's Lynn for sponsorships, Winnie probably for lead, and maybe Neil for sales. I'd love to get your thoughts on one tip that you guys would give to people in a similar space in order to really get the most out of events. So Winnie, I'm going to pick on you.
Yeah, sure.
So how would you, yes. Yeah.
In terms of ROI, that would be something that we looked at the most. So we always look into, if we have sponsored the event before, how successful was it previously, and what are the success factors. So usually the companies that attend, the title levels. So that's, when I talk to Lynn, that's also what I talk about all the time. Like, give me the company names, give me the job titles, and of course for us it would be the CPL. Looking at how much it would be to deliver that particular audience to the room, and how successful will the vendor we are working with will be able to drive that. Because as much as our database would like to have those audience, we don't have those audience, which is why we always work with other third-party vendors to get those into our system. Yeah, so that's how we usually look at whether we go for the sponsor or not.
Interesting. You talked about CPL. I'm curious, cost per lead. How do you quantify, or how do you define a cost per lead at an event per se?
So in general, they will always have a targeted number of attendees. So that would be how we take the sponsorship cost divided by that. But of course, we need to look at how compelling that list would be. Actually removing those titles or companies that we are not interested in, or not interested in, but least of a priority. And then looking at the people that we will want to pursue, and then looking at that, how much would it actually be to deliver versus perhaps other platforms. So it could be via our digital efforts, or we sponsor that event. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. So it sounds like it's quality over quantity.
For sure.
Awesome. This one is probably more for Lynn or Neil. It says, what are some of the challenges from a sponsorship sales point of view? What are some of the ways to bring value to a sponsor?
Well, I think having bridged both sides, but kind of approaching it in the same mentality. I mean, it's, again, building the relationship to be able to pick up the phone and have that conversation, you know, spending the time getting to know the pain points, and almost like being consultative in the way you sell with them. You know, like, it's the same as building a business use case. You know, the company wants to sponsor the event for XXX. So you ensure that you can deliver this stuff for the sponsor, and then you build that relationship, make sure you deliver effectively on it, and then continue to the next level and the next level. And hopefully you work together for years to come. You know, it's, I think, being consultative in the way you sell and building a business use case in the same way you would for trying to alleviate a pain point for a client on this my new site. It's kind of the same mentality, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Lynn?
Yeah, from my side, it's probably are the challenges, but also, I guess, opportunity or the tips there as well. It's collaboration and communication. So that's the challenge. So collaboration can be the challenge. For example, when I'm working with my key contact, normally everything's fine, perfect, you know, from before signing, after start delivering. However, sponsorship or with events, as Winnie mentioned before, bring the sales involved with promotion and things like that. So from an event organizer point of view, after liaising with my marketing contact, for example, how do I collaborate with a wider team? So that's the challenge, but also that will be a tip. So if you do manage to collaborate with kind of a wider team with a sponsor, that will definitely bring you to a next tier. Communication, it's basically before signing a contract, making sure that you have the thorough discussion about what do you want, what we can offer, basically making sure that you're on the same page, not overselling it. Don't sell something that you can't deliver, or you need a massive to push to deliver. Make sure that you, as a sponsorship salesperson or sponsorship lead, to work with your content team, to work with your marketing team as well, from the event organizer side, to make sure whatever you're selling is backed up by your wider team. So it's these two, it's very big words, but I think making sure that working with sponsors, collaborating, and then making sure you constantly give feedback. This is quite key as well, because we're from both ends. So, and you know better than this, we have completely different perspective. The way we see things is completely different how vendor or sponsors or consultants see things, right? How do we find that mutual ground to make sure, because our goal is the same? How come we all the time come to a conclusion, no, I don't agree with you, no, neither do I? How do I come to the conclusion and eventually deliver the event and back to, delivering the leads back to you? Because that goal is the same. So that constant communication throughout and breaking through all the challenges in the middle, the small challenges, are super key.
I think
absolutely, yeah.
Sorry, just thinking there, like what you were saying about the previous experience and stuff. Like just thinking, like it's, especially now more than ever, that everything has sort of changed over the past couple of years. It's not just a case of going through the motions of running like a big scale in-person event now. Like it's so dynamic that I think, even back in the day when you were kind of running events to keep them successful, I would always sort of think like not to be afraid of moving away from the sort of traditional methods of like, pick up the sponsorship sales deck, or you get a booth, a speaking session, blah, blah, blah for this, XXX. Like keep testing new approaches and sort of ideating different ways that you can sort of mold your platform to meet the client expectations, and like, keep it fresh and relevant. Like we're saying, time back to the comms communication, almost like bridging the gaps between sales, marketing and operations, like, and just continuing to evolve it to match kind of what your clients need rather than what you think you can provide them kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some really good points out of that. Lynn, I think the importance of not overselling it, setting those expectations, because I think the devil's in the details when it comes to events and partnerships, and really being clear upfront in terms of what you're actually offering versus what they're actually getting. Easier said than done, because a lot of times there are things that pop up that you maybe hadn't anticipated, particularly when you're just starting out. But I think the more you do it, you kind of identify and connect some of the dots. And then to Neil's point as well. So, guys, some really, really great conversations, some wonderful tips, and some wonderful questions from the audience as well too. One more, let's see. Nimish says, not just cost per lead for event sponsorship. What's the quality of the audience, and does it match my target profile, geography, purchasing authority, and has budget? What level of interactions did I have with the attendees? What was my cost per sale engagement, and how does that compare to other marketing activities? What was my cost per customer acquisition, and how does that compare to other marketing activities? It sounds like Nimish has got very, very deep into the details, guys. So I think these are great questions for any of us running similar kind of programs. How do we answer some of these questions? Going back to what Lynn was mentioning earlier, making sure we're addressing these as early as possible, because in Nimish's example, this is one of the things that people are asking, how do you clarify that up front? And then to Lynn's point, how do you deliver on that? So Nimish, I think you wonderful point there. I really appreciate you chiming and sharing that. Some wonderful questions in there that I'm going to keep in mind in my upcoming programs as well too. Guys, thank you guys so much. There we are. There's those beautiful folks. All right. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all your pearls of wisdom with us. I think it's been super practical. And like I said, judging by the conversation from the audience, it's been helpful for them as well, guys. So thank you guys so much. For all the people listening, please connect with our speakers. You'll learn a lot from them, connecting them one-on-one. And thank you guys so much for watching, for listening. I really, really appreciate the support. I hope everyone is staying safe during these times, and we'll see you very soon. Take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.